Let's get started as some more people trickle in. It is a holiday weekend in the United States, but we're coming to you live from Israel, where it is definitely not yet a holiday weekend. So welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, going on a job interview, flirting, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we'd like to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write your requests in the chat window here on Zoom, or you can email us at hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's hebrew@nbn.org.il. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. We've gotten quite a few requests, which is always amazing. We always want to hear from you, and sometimes we do repeat classes because they're so popular, but oftentimes we've covered it. We've been doing this quite a while. I think we have over 80 classes up there with over 10,000 views. Highly recommend going to youtube.com. Check out our entire list. You just type in Cafe Oleh, you'll see a whole playlist of all of our classes. This class will be up there along with the spreadsheet that goes along with it in the next few days. If you're signed up through Zoom, you'll get it through email as well. So, owing to the fact that some of us are on a holiday weekend and some of us are about to be on a holiday weekend, or rather holiday weeks, we're going to spend our last two sessions of this summer session getting ready for the holiday season. And I call it the holiday season on purpose, not just to appropriate it from certain other holidays around the world, but because it is very much a season in Israel. We have just over 3 weeks of holidays with a few breaks in between, but it is quite intense. Whether this is your first time in Israel for the holidays, you have not yet made Aliyah and you're thinking about it, or you're planning this multiple times you've been here before, always good to have a refresher, both what to expect, what's different from diaspora versus in Israel when it comes to the holiday season, and so forth. And when I say holiday season, I mean starting from even before the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, until the very end of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah. If those names don't mean anything to you, don't worry. We're going to do a crash course in all of it, and more importantly, what to expect this week. Next week, which is our last class before we break for the holiday season, just a few days before it starts, we're going to do an incredibly important lesson that I know many of you are looking for, which is how to manage small talk around the holidays, particularly around holiday dinners, but it can be through anything throughout the holiday season. Small talk is difficult in any language, let alone in Hebrew. So before we get to that, we're going to share the vocabulary for today's class. As always, you are welcome to screenshot, old school pen and paper, whatever you prefer. But again, you will get a copy of this lesson by email. And if not, it will be up on YouTube in the next few days. One last piece of housekeeping: if you're joining us live on Zoom and have a question about this specific class, please write it in the Q&A box here on Zoom. Otherwise, any other questions, comments, concerns, requests, etc., chat window only, please. Okay, let's open this up. So, oftentimes there's two things that happen when we get to this time of the year. First off, it's a lot to deal with. Like I said, it is just about 3 weeks of holiday merrymaking and so forth, and there's a lot to get done. It has the same weight of the most popular, the most celebrated Jewish holiday, which is Pesach, Passover, and it has a very similar feel in the air of people hurriedly preparing, getting ready for a festive meal, and so forth. It's a wonderful time to be in Israel. It's also a very hectic time. So it's great to have a review of things are where things are at and how they fall and what days are what and how many are celebrated in this and that. And equally important, and I speak as someone who made Aliyah and grew up speaking one way versus now speaking in modern Hebrew, how to pronounce the names of the holidays in modern Hebrew. This is not a slight to your diaspora community which you came from, but keeping in mind we're talking about modern Hebrew and that the majority of Jews in Israel are from Middle Eastern or local backgrounds, meaning Sephardi, Mizrahi, or they were born here. In North America, the vast majority of Jews are from Ashkenazi backgrounds. It's not to say there aren't Sfaradim and Mizrahim, but the norm that we're used to is Ashkenazi, both in terms of custom and also pronunciation of Hebrew. Israel, it's very difficult outside of ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods and some what we call Anglo, meaning native English-speaking populations, to hear the way the names of the holidays are celebrated and pronounced like we'd know abroad. So we're also going to go through that, not trying to slight anyone's accent or anyone's background. It's just simply the reality of Israel. Okay, first one up. We're going to start, this is the season before Rosh Hashanah, and each community, be it Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, or Mizrahi, has a tradition of when they start Slichot. This is how we say it in Hebrew. Again, modern Hebrew in Israel, folks. Please, please save the energy in writing in the Q&A here or in the chat. But wait a minute, Jay, I pronounce it like this, and it's Hebrew. I'm not trying to slight that, folks. I'm trying to have you understand in the modern state of Israel, in Israeli society, this is the norm. This is how the vast majority of people will understand one another, is when they pronounce words as I do in this lesson, and how they're written both in Hebrew and the transliteration, not necessarily in the English, okay? Not trying to slight anyone's observance or background whatsoever. First one up is Slichot. Slichot is usually performed late at night. For example, here in Tel Aviv at the Great Synagogue, they have every Tuesday night leading up to Rosh Hashanah, they have a Slichot service. It usually starts around midnight. Synagogues have different things. That is usually in a run up to the High Holy Day services, usually some of the same religious poems that you'll hear during those services, but with orchestration, perhaps with more accompaniment, as it were, to get us ready for the season. One of the things that you probably don't find in diaspora and you will find in Israel is what we call haramat kosit, or if it's plural, haramot kosit. Leharim is to raise up something, and kosit comes from kos, a cup. This is a toast. It's usually done at work. If you join us if you are ever at the Nefesh B'Nefesh Hub, they typically have one here in Tel Aviv, which is a shared workspace as well as the offices of Nefesh B'Nefesh in Tel Aviv. They usually have a haramat kosit before the big holidays. The big holidays in Israel being Rosh Hashanah and Pesach. We'll get into that a little bit more in a second. Haramat kosit is simply a toast, right? Toast as in over a drink, not toast over food. And it's often done in workplaces the week or the days before Rosh Hashanah or a major holiday. It's often done in workplaces, shared workspaces, things like that, offices, so forth. It's a very nice tradition. Rather, it's not a service, it's simply a toast. Sometimes there'll be like catered snacks. Sometimes it'll just be a drink. Depends on the place, but it's a very common tradition to have among Israelis. Just one second. Okay. So yeah, haramat kosit, it happens all over the country, in various places. It's a really nice tradition. If you do not work, you can also check in with your community centers. Oftentimes municipalities will have them as well. Really nice tradition. Okay. The name of this holiday in Israel, folks, is Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah. We've talked about this before, that the default emphasis in Hebrew is on the last syllable. The last syllable. So that's why it's Rosh Hashanah. Okay? Simply means head of the year or new year. We often translate it, but it means the head of the year. This is one of the holidays that is celebrated 2 days, both in Israel and in diaspora. That comes to how the new moon and the new month are celebrated. Depending on the month, it's more complicated than modern Hebrew class. We're just going to stick to knowing it begins this week, this year. So you see here, I put the dates on the left-hand side. September the 15th, Friday evening, and it goes through Sunday the 17th in the evening. Okay, so it's 2 days in Israel, the full day of Saturday and Sunday, just like it is in diaspora. The big thing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in this class, is Rosh Hashanah. It's not that people don't go to tefillot, to services in Israel. They do. But what is considered the centerpiece of Rosh Hashanah is the meal that is held, the festive meal that takes place this year, Friday night, Friday the 15th in the evening. And that's what I was talking about in referring to comparing it to Pesach. It's that level of preparedness. It's that level of focus on the food, particularly for the first night dinner. People will also, go out of their way for the second night, but certainly the first night is held up in esteem like the Leila Seder in Israel, like the Seder night here in Israel, because we only have one here in Israel. Rosh Hashanah dinner is a big deal, and there are comedy skits about it, dramas about it. Think of like every dysfunctional family film is that kind of level of the Rosh Hashanah meal. And it's not just family, friends will have it, municipalities and organizations will have a big dinner because it's that big of a deal. And we'll talk about what you do and don't do during that meal in a little bit, but just putting that in your minds before we get there. Aseret Yemei Tshuva. This doesn't have any uniqueness in Israel other than these are what we call the 10 days of repentance, the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Same thing as we call it abroad if you use Hebrew abroad. Okay, this one always threw me off, and it's just a slight difference. In diaspora, we're used to saying Yom Kippur, right? Or some iteration of Yom Kippur. In Hebrew, in Israel, modern Hebrew, you're typically going to hear Yom Kippurim. Right? It's the same holiday. It's just instead of one atonement, Kippur, atonement, Kippurim, because we recite a litany of sins that we are repenting for, right? So Yom Kippurim is typically how we're going to hear the name of this holiday, which lasts this year from Sunday the 24th in the evening till the next night, the 25th of September, which is a Monday evening, okay? Then we have a few days of break. We have here everyone getting ready for Sukkot, whether they are building a sukkah, their own sukkah, and all the things that come with it. I'm actually going to put here one other thing that I forgot to write, which is the Shuk Alba'at Haminim. One of the things that typifies immediately after Yom Kippur is that people get ready for Sukkot immediately after, whether it's building a sukkah or the next morning going out and buying their lulav and etrog, the pieces that make up the ritual pieces that we use for Sukkot. This is called the 4 species there. Okay. And Shuk Arbaat Haminim will go up until the start of Sukkot, and this is both municipal, so public, as well as private initiatives to bring the various pieces of the lulav and etrog. Remember, there are 4 species, Arbaat Haminim, so we say this in Hebrew, that make up the lulav and etrog, hadas, arava. And both municipalities as well as private initiatives and synagogues will put on a shuk. A shuk is simply an open air market, and you'll see this here in Tel Aviv in Kikar Giv'on, which is just off of Hashmonaim Street. You'll see this in the Municipal Plaza in Jerusalem and elsewhere in the country, organized by the local municipality, of various merchants selling various grades of the 4 species, and it's called a Shuk Arbaat Haminim. You'll see advertisements for this, and it's a wonderful tradition that you can attend. And then Sukkot. Sukkot begins Friday night, the 29th of September, and it goes, remember that this is Israel, so we only celebrate one day of Chag for Sukkot, so it's only one day, so it's from Friday evening through the following Saturday evening, the 29th of September, and the evening to the 30th in the evening. Okay, Sukkot, it's one day, and then it's followed by Chol HaMoed. That's how we say it, Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed is not necessarily something that a non-religious person is going to know what that is. So don't assume when you say Chol HaMoed that a native Israeli is necessarily going to know what that means. But those are the intermediate days between the first and last day of Sukkot, where work is typically done. Typically, though, in Israel, this time is off from schools, and a lot of people take off vacation time for this. So this is a good time to either avoid public parks and museums and things like that, or definitely go with them if you like crowds, because things will be crowded during this period of Chol HaMoed, Sukkot. People have school off, they take work off. It's a good time for vacation. And then finally in Israel, remember, because Sukkot is 7 days, that also the last day of Chag is comprised of both Shmini Atzeret, and that's how we say it, and Simchat Torah. That's considered one day in Israel, not two separate days like it is in diaspora. And that is the 6th of October in the evening from the 7th of October in the evening. Okay, it's one holiday combined. Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. Another very lovely tradition of right after Sukkot, in fact, the very night that Simchat Torah Shmini Atzeret is over, in this case, Saturday, October the 7th in the evening, is what we call Hakafot Shniot. Those of you who've celebrated Simchat Torah know that one of the things that you do during it is Hakafot, where you take the Sifrei Torah, the books of the Torah from the Ark, and you parade around in a procession around the community, around the congregation, with various songs and various verses that are chanted. The night immediately after Simchat Torah, when Chag is done, most municipalities, many municipalities, as well as individual communities, will have a Hakafot Shniot. This is simply a way to keep partying. Also, when diaspora is still in holiday mode, and in Israel we no longer are, but it's an excuse to keep the party going. And so you'll have in public spaces more of these hakafot, more of these processions with the Torah and dancing in the streets happen. It's a very nice tradition. And then finally, an equally important tradition you need to absolutely, we've talked about this before, but always important to recall, is what we call Acharei Chagim. Acharei Chagim simply means after the holidays. Acharei, after, Chagim, holidays. Right? But Acharei Chagim is the closest we have to an American concept, which is let's do lunch. Right? The joke is always that this isn't just a joke in Israel, by the way, fellow Americans, this is a joke around the world, that Americans are insincere when they say things like, let's do lunch, because it's never actually going to happen, right? It maybe be weeks, if not months before we meet, let alone talk again. And if someone says, oh, we should meet up for lunch, it doesn't actually mean that we're going to meet up. Whereas an Israeli, if you were to say that to a native Israeli, they would take out their phone or take out their appointment book and say, okay, when are you free, right? Acharei Chagim is that in Israeli society. When someone tells you in the last few weeks, and certainly this week and next, bo nedaber be'acharei Chagim, bo nedaber acharei Chagim, let's talk after the holidays, okay? They are not putting a definite time on that, nor should you. No one should expect the day after the holidays, which in this case is the 8th of October, which is a Sunday, which is technically a day back at work, that people are going to be on top of everything and ready to go. And, oh yeah, we talked about meeting or having or doing lunch. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen probably for the first week, maybe even the second week after the holidays. Because again, 3 weeks of holidays, folks, and pretty intense holidays at that, it's just not going to happen. So if someone says to you, Acharei Chagim, understand that's what that means. That understand they just don't have the space to commit to anything right now and immediately after the holiday season. Okay, that's what that term means. Okay. We've gone through a really rough sketch of the holidays. There's obviously a lot more. And like I said, next week, we're not only going to go through the small talk, we're also going to go through greetings, what to wish on each holiday, because that's no less important, right? What's the difference in what you say to someone on Rosh Hashanah or right up until it versus Yom Kippurim versus Sukkot and so forth, okay? We're going to go through all that next week. Right now, I want to take you through, we took through those holidays. Now we're going to focus on Rosh Hashanah. Why is this so important? I'm going to share with you my screen to emphasize again the importance of that holiday meal. Okay, what I'm sharing with you is the website of Rami Levy. Rami Levy is one of Israel's national supermarket chains. They order online, and as you see here, Sal Hakniot. Oh, let's see if I can get it to stop. Okay, what I just stopped on, this is the main website. If you do online shopping with them, you don't have to. We've done a whole previous lesson on online shopping. You can see it on our YouTube channel. But what does it say here, this banner that just started scrolling across and I stopped? At the top of it, you see the logos of all the major news stations in Israel, consumer report organizations, consumer advocacy organizations. And it says here in Hebrew, Kol haskarim kovim, right, in black here. Kol haskarim kovim. All the polls, all the surveys testify. סל הקניות הזול ביותר לחג נמצא ברמי לוי. The סל הקניות, the shopping bag. סל is a bag. קניות, shopping. הזול ביותר, the cheapest, right? זול is inexpensive or cheap. הזול ביותר, the cheapest. לחג, and again, חג is referring to Rosh Hashanah. Don't get confused here. I just went through the whole list of holidays. It's specifically talking about Rosh Hashanah first night dinner. Full stop. סל הקניות הזול ביותר לחג, the cheapest shopping bag for the holiday, meaning Rosh Hashanah dinner, nimtza berami Levi, is found at Rami Levi. Okay, so what they're telling you here is if you shop at Rami Levi for the holiday, you will get the best deal. And what it asks you here is to go to Lamitram. Lamitram is the compound, in this case, the virtual compound where they sell all the foods for the holidays. Now, this is also important because remember, Cafe Oleh, we don't just teach Hebrew, we teach you Israeli life hacks. And one of those is to understand how Israelis observe Rosh Hashanah. And one of them is through this festive meal which will be Friday night this year. And also the foods that we eat, right? When we are abroad in many of our communities, especially those of us who are Ashkenazi from North America, we are used to a festive meal as well. It usually has a round challah or a challah agula, and we often dip apples in honey, right? Tapuach udvash, tapuach bidvash, apples in honey. Jewish traditions, especially from the rest of the world, have other foods, other auspicious foods called simanim that we eat during this. So you're going to see some of these pop up as we scroll down this list. So first off, this is a festive meal. So it's all about making sure your kitchen is ready for it. So the very first things that you see here are sirim, pots, right? Pots ready to start cooking away. Pots, machbat, a pan, all sorts of different things here at Rami Levi on sale. And now you start seeing foods you wouldn't necessarily associate with Rosh Hashanah if you don't know the tradition of simanim, auspicious foods to eat. These are mentioned in the Talmud, but again, many of us did not grow up eating these. And in Israel, they are much more common. So first off, you have various kinds of dvash. And then you have here luf or krisha. Luf or krisha are the same words in Hebrew for a leek. This is one of the 5 auspicious foods that many people eat on Rosh Hashanah in various forms, usually in forms of like fried patties, where you slice it thin, fry it, mix it into a batter with flour and egg and spices, and then fry it. It's a very Sfaradi food to eat, but also you find it in communities in Iraq and Syria. Tirosh is the equivalent of grape juice in Israel. It comes in red and white, just like good old grape juice elsewhere in the world does. And the next thing we see, and we're going to talk about this next week as well, you are going to see more ads for chocolate and perfume than you have ever seen, except during Pesach. It is a very common tradition when you go to someone's home for a holiday in Israel, even if it's not your tradition, even if you're not hosting, it's considered it's in good form to give a gift. One of the gifts that's often given is chocolate, right? Whether or not you know if the family keeps kashrut and if the meal is meat or dairy, that doesn't matter. Giving chocolate is a popular thing in Israel. That's also a very popular thing among former Soviet Jews, with a very strong tradition of giving boxes of chocolate at events. So part of that is that tradition. Part of it is just a general tradition. So you will see lots and lots of ads for chocolate. The other ad you will see, and I recommend not giving this to a friend at the holiday dinner, is perfume. I think that would be a little rude to walk into a festive dinner and hand the guest a bottle of perfume. It's sort of a little bit of a passive aggressive comment about their appearance, perhaps. Right? But anyways, chocolate you will see in abundance in stores on sale. And I'm going to share with you pics of these packages of food that are also given as gifts shortly. Okay, so chocolate, obviously you're going to see the classics, right? Apples, tapuchim, rimonim, pomegranates, not just because they are in season at this point. This is also a very auspicious food to eat at this time of year. So you will see everything is rimonim. So many things have pomegranates in them, or pomegranate syrup, or pomegranate juice. It's also the time of season they're at. More tirosh, grape juice, more apples. Selek is another one of these Talmudic auspicious foods. Selek is the Hebrew word for beet. So you'll see beets also a lot. More chocolate. I promised you more chocolate. More chocolate. I told you it'd be coming. Wine. Let me give you another cultural hack. You are absolutely welcome to bring a bottle of wine to a festive dinner. That's a quite nice thing to do. Whether or not the family is observant, whether or not of anything, you don't have to worry about anything. However, and with all due respect to Rami Levy and any other online shopping, please, folks, this is a family festive event. Even if it's not family, it's adopted family, it's friends who spent a lot of time making this holiday dinner happen. Please don't buy your wine for the festive meal from a supermarket. It doesn't look so nice. Some of these brands are perfectly nice. Dalton that you see here, Tepperberg, they come in nicer ranges, right? These are the more basic ones that Tepperberg and Dalton put out. Please go to a liquor store. This country is full of them. They'll give you great advice and you'll get a good deal, but do not show up to a holiday dinner with a bottle that costs less than 40 shekel. That's just not good etiquette. Even in Israel, we do have etiquette. That's not a good one. Okay, Tepperberg, Dalton are perfectly nice wineries, just not this specific line. Okay, let's keep going. Aha, dates, and more specifically, what we call silan. Silan is date honey. You may have encountered this abroad. This is, by all accounts, the original dvash, as in Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. When we hear the word honey in Israel, we're often referring to date honey. Okay, not necessarily bee honey. Bee honey certainly is important, but date honey is often referred to. Excuse me. In this way, also because dates are one of those other auspicious foods mentioned in the Talmud. So you're also going to see a lot of fresh dates and dried dates, but also date honey. We use this a lot in desserts, also in meals, braising things with date honey. It's a great alternative to honey. Very healthy as long as you get ones that are 100% dates. As you see here in the middle, it says silan 100% tmarim, or right here on the left as well, meaning it's 100% dates, no sugar added. Dates are sweet enough, they don't need the sugar. It's a really great alternative to honey and all sorts of other sugars. Okay, you're going to see all sorts of other things to make a festive meal here, from tahina to rice to frozen artichoke hearts, frozen carrots, a lot of fish, right? Fish is also an auspicious thing to eat during Rosh Hashanah. One of the things that's equally important, auspicious by some communities, is to eat the head or of fish or sheep. You're not going to see that on this, so don't worry if that grosses you out, but you will see lots of fish, lots of different fishes here. You will see meat obviously on sale. It's that kind of holiday, big, family roasts or chicken or beef or veal. More wine, more rice, more tahina. Again, traditional things that when Jews come from predominantly Middle Eastern backgrounds or live here in the Middle East, i.e. Israel, this is our diet here. Okay, also a lot of disposable cutlery, because if you're having a big dinner, you don't necessarily want to be doing dishes. You'll see a lot of this more fancy kind of disposable cutlery and dishes, napkins, table settings, nuts, and dried food, dried figs, and other things. Some communities, especially Ashkenazi communities, have a tradition of not eating nuts on the New Year, whereas other communities do, right? Remember, Israel is comprised of many different communities, not just a few, right? So a lot of different party mixes, tea, various soft drinks to put on the table. It's pretty self-explanatory, but as you see here, they put together what Rami Levy and what other online shopping guides will assume to be what most people want on their tables. And I want to show you just a picture I took the other day of another supermarket chain. Let me see if it downloaded. It did. Just one second. So this is instead of from Rami Levy that we just saw, this is the inside of Victory, which is a very popular discount chain here in Tel Aviv and in the Tel Aviv metro area. This is the inside of one of their larger stores here in central Tel Aviv. And you see here lots of chocolate. Obviously, not all the chocolate is there. Olive oil, things of honey cake, ugat dvash, all sorts of other snacks and things at a festive meal or perhaps before it. Another popular food besides ugat dvash, honey cake that you see here in the front, it's actually called, this specific brand is called Uga Beta'am Dvash, honey flavored cake. I don't necessarily know if I would eat that. You will often see these cookies sold this time of year, but all year round, called duvshaniot. And they basically taste like gingerbread. They're a very heavily spiced cookie. They're soft, and they're covered with a very thick and almost solid honey glaze. They're usually white glaze on the top, and the cookie itself is a dark brown flavor, very reminiscent of honey cake flavor, of that very sort of spiced flavor, but instead coming in cookies. Really nice, duvshaniot. Coming from dvash, by the way, for honey. And then the other picture I want to show you, well, we'll talk about that actually in a second as we get to that word. So let me get back to our vocabulary now that we hopefully emphasized upon you how important the dinner is. Let's talk about gift giving. So gift giving, like I said, is a big deal for Rosh Hashanah, whether it's at that haramat kosit, at the toast, whether you are going to a friend's house. This is often the time of year, just like at Pesach, these are the two times of year, Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, that companies often give a gift to workers. Okay, and they come in different forms. One of the forms that they come in is a ma'araz. A ma'araz is simply a gift package. And I'm going to show you a gift package example. You've seen these probably anywhere you've gone recently. You'll see these in both grocery stores, boutique stores, fancy stores, on Wolt. You'll see this in all sorts of different places. Let me just pull it up. Just one second. Here it is. Right, I walked by a nut and spice store the other day, and in the entry they had all these marazim, right? All these marazim you see here. One is all sorts of different snacky things of chocolate-covered nuts and dried fruits. One here on the left has silan, that honey, nuts, maple syrup, wine, all sorts of other things. The ones in the back have dried fruits and bottles of wine. You'll see these prepackaged ones all over the place. You can also customize your own one. It's a very traditional gift to give to someone at a dinner, if you're invited over to a dinner, and as well as to receive one of these. Also, you'll receive these at in offices. Oftentimes you'll see people walking home in this weekend next with one of these in a bag or just as big as these, right? Of varying sizes. You don't necessarily need to go out of your way to buy a huge one or a very expensive one. Any of these are quite lovely. But if we go back to our vocab list, so we talked about a maraz. The other thing, as I said, that's often given, especially in work settings, is simply a shai lachag. Shai lachag, shai is another word for matana, a present. Okay, so if you like that name Shai as a first name, now you know what it means. It's a gift, right? A present. So Shai Lachag is typically given on Pesach and Rosh Hashanah. It can be a maraz, as you saw. It can also be a tav. A tav is a gift card. This is still in vogue in some companies. I think it's very old-fashioned because as opposed to a bonus, a cash bonus, or a maraz, it's usually very limited to where you can spend it. But a tav is very popular still to give and to receive this time of year as a shai lachag, as a holiday gift. And it can be of varying amounts. One of the classic ones that was given for many years, especially by unionized work for unionized workers, was called Tav Zahav, the golden gift card, and it was used at supermarkets. So you could go do all your holiday shopping with a tav, or get clothes from certain stores. There are very different tavim, the plural, that are given out this time of year. Depending on your company, usually you won't give a tav between friends or family. It's a little, certainly between friends, maybe family, like grandparents will give to grandkids a tav, but you won't give a tav to a friend. It's not very friendly. If you're going to give a gift to a friend, it would be one of these ma'arazim, one of these gift packages, or a nice bottle of wine, something along those lines, not a gift card. Just think of it in North American terms, as you will, or Western European terms. You won't give a friend a gift card this time of year. It doesn't work, especially a close friend. Okay, but we're still on shopping, and this can be a very stressful time where people are getting ready to decorate their homes, to buy gifts for friends, to buy gifts for colleagues. So I think this is also a great opportunity to review, even though we've done this before, a quick review of going shopping, and particularly the finances behind shopping. We're not going to go through all the different types of shopping there is. I'm certainly happy to answer those questions, but we're talking more about general shopping in general. Okay, so first off, when we go shopping, these are just some of the basic words you're going to look for and need in order to navigate both shopping and buying something. Kabbalah is a receipt. Okay, it's what you get after you purchase something. To know what the price is of something, it's the tag. Okay, tag, like the word tag. There are some linguists out there who think that tag came from tag, because tag is already mentioned in biblical times, in biblical Hebrew. So tag is a very old word, simply meaning a tag or a label. Okay, and remember, in Israel, another piece of consumer protection, if there is a physical tag on the product and it rings up at a different price at the register, it's the tag on the actual product that is the ultimate price, not the one in the register. You can argue it as much as you want. That is the law. Mechil is price. Mechil or mechir, depending on how you pronounce the letter resh, is price. Okay. Mivtza. Mivtza is a discounted sale. I put that in particular because you will hear the word sale. Samech yud yud lamed. I hate that word because we have the word mivtza. Let me write it here, in fact, for you. Sale. You've probably seen that before, but mivtza is the accepted and mainstream word for a discounted sale. In Israel, it also means a military operation, which, as I always joke, and it's always true, going into the middle of a sale in an Israeli store can often feel like a military operation. Best of luck, b'atzlacha, as we say, if you are doing that in the next week or so. Mivtza is a sale. Zikui. Zikui is a very important thing. If you're going to Rami Levi and something is not there, or you need to return it, or you need to return anything, Zikui is store credit. Remember that in Israel, we have very specific return and exchange rules. Usually return is within 7 to 14 days, depending on the product itself, and exchange is within 30 days. Oftentimes, though, if the product is out of stock, or you bought it and something's defective with it and they don't have another, you will get zikui. Zikui is simply store credit. Okay, let's say you're in the store and you need some help navigating, or someone is trying to help you, because that does indeed happen in Israel, folks. Someone trying to help you will come up to you and say, Efshar la'azor lach, to a woman, or Efshar la'azor lecha, to a man. Okay, may I help you? This is how we say it in Hebrew. Efshar la'azor lach, Efshar la'azor lecha, depending on gender. Okay. Efshar ezra means the same thing. May I help you? Meaning the person who works in the store is saying this to a customer. If it's the other way around, if a customer says this to a worker, usually they're saying it in an annoyed tone or in a passive aggressive tone, because at that point, the store clerk has not either seen them or does not care to help them. If you have to say as the customer, Slicha efshar ezra, you can hear it in my voice, that is very passive aggressive, if not annoyed. Whereas if a clerk says that to someone, either Efshar ezra or Efshar la'azor, simply is being nice, may I help you? Okay. Another thing that a store clerk will come up to you and say is either to a man, mistader, or to a woman, mistaderet, right? Male, mistader, female, mistaderet, and it means, are you doing all right? Are you managing all right? Right? Are you taking care of, is another way to think about this. Okay. And that's if they ask you. As I wrote here, if the customer says this, not as a question, but as a statement to a person who asks you, for example, Efshar la'azor lecha, you can answer either lo toda, or you can answer no thank you, or you can answer what you actually need, or you can simply say mistader toda, I'm doing all right, thank you. Okay, mistader as a question means, are you okay? And mistader as a statement means, I'm doing all right. Okay. Now here's how you could ask, right? Just as we talked about Efshar la'azor lecha or lach, and Efshar ezra. Slicha, Efshar ezra. Excuse me, could you help me? Or Slicha, Efshar la'azor li. Excuse me, could you help me? Right? These, again, it's all about tone. Slicha, Efshar ezra can sound a little, not necessarily aggressive, but a little bit more forceful, like no one is paying attention to you. Slicha, Efshar la'azor li. Excuse me, could you help me? Again, it's all about tone. If you say it aggressively, it will be aggressive. If you say it nicely, maybe the place is really busy. Maybe someone didn't pay attention that you actually needed help. Whatever it is, these are the ways that you can politely ask for help. Okay. A very simple way to ask when a store is open until. Let's say you want to call a store because you don't know if they're open till late. Slicha, ad matai ptuchim? Excuse me, when are you open until? Ad, until, matai, when, ptuchim. Ptuchim is the past participle of liftoach, to open, so open or opened, right? Until when are you open? Ad matai ptuchim, when is your store open, until when? Okay. And then finally, because we included these words the last time we talked about this, so I want to be sure it's here. Dmei mishloach. Dmei mishloach, delivery fee. Dmei best translates as fee. So like dmei knisa is entry fee. Knisa is entrance or entry. Dmei amala, commission fee. Dmei mishloach, delivery fee. So oftentimes, those of us who are busy, neither getting a package or a gift, a maraz or a shai, delivered to us so we can give it as a gift, either from the store itself or through a courier company like Wolt or Get, there usually is a dmei mishloach. There's a delivery fee included. So you want to be sure when you're budgeting all your different gifts and packages this season, how much the dmei mishloach is. And finally, kalul. Kalul is always a good word to know. We're talking about finances and being fiscally responsible. Kalul means included, but it's included as an adjective, right? We often say, Israelis, for example, love to go on vacations where it's hakol kalul, an all-inclusive resort, right? Hakol kalul, hakol everything, kalul included, all inclusive. Okay, so this is an important word also to know when you're budgeting things. What's included? Is delivery fee included? Are there other fees associated with it? Okay, I'm going to stop here and take any questions you have, bearing in mind we're going to continue talking about holiday season next week. We're going to go through the holidays, appropriate greetings, and some help with small talk. People always need help with small talk, but especially this time of year, what's the appropriate greeting and wish to give, and how do we get through a holiday meal without, well, maybe we do want to get into a political fight because that's how we do things in Israel. But if we don't, regardless, how do we navigate it through small talk? Okay, let's answer some questions in the Q&A only. Do you make a toast on alcoholic beverages at work, or is it usually alcohol free? Usually you'll have an option. It usually is over wine at a office. Even in the middle of the day, it'll be over wine because it's a festive occasion and that's the Jewish tradition. However, there usually will be non-alcoholic drinks available, but it's typically over wine. Sometimes in other places, it'll be over other alcoholic products. Is the term days of awe used in Israel to refer to the 10 days of repentance? If so, what is the Hebrew expression? No, we say Aseret Yemei Tshuva. Let me write that up again. Okay, as I wrote here, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance. Tshuva, repentance or returning, as it also means, and that's the whole story of what that all means together, right? But that's how we say it in Hebrew. Yamim Noraim, yes, you're absolutely right. We do say Yamim Noraim for these days, and let me include that here. Thank you for reminding me. Yamim Noraim. If it'll let me write in Hebrew. Yamim Noraim. Okay. We can refer to this as the high holy days. Right? Yamim Noraim. Yamim are days. Nora is it in modern Hebrew means awful, but in this case, this is that word awe. Remember, awe and awful are related to one another, if not the same word, right? So this is days of awe, right? Yamim Noraim are days of awe. I'll write that over in the English section. Yamim Noraim. This is both the days of awe and the high holy days. Days of awe. But we do not say the 10 days of awe in Hebrew. We simply say Yamim Noraim, which is inclusive, by the way, of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, or Aseret Yemei Tshuva, which are the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. Okay. Is it expected that if going to a friend for Rosh Hashanah dinner, you offer to bring a dish? Great question. Definitely ask, what can you bring? And we'll talk about that next week, how to say that in Hebrew. But definitely offer to bring something. Usually if I'm going to friends and they speak English, I'll say, what can I bring? Or what may I bring? Right? Because in English we have can and may. We don't have that in Hebrew. Ma efshar lavi, right? What may I bring is the closest way we can say that in Hebrew. But definitely offer to bring something, not necessarily a dish. Don't expect a meal to be potluck. Don't expect the meal also to be fully cooked by the person hosting. Oftentimes the person will have it catered or will just get all sorts of prepared foods and put them together. I would rather say, what can I bring? Ma efshar lavi, what may I bring? Rather than offering to bring something specific. It's just my own style of manners. Okay, I see a lot of good fellow Ashkenazim asking questions about foods. Do teglach exist? They do exist, but you need to find an Ashkenazi style caterer or bakery that will do it. And there are plenty of Ashkenazi bakeries and caterers throughout the country. I can't direct you one to another because this is a large country. I'm in Tel Aviv. I don't know where all of you are, but you can find places like that. And often they will advertise in English, knowing that that's the population who's interested in such things. What range of amounts is appropriate to spend on a gift when attending a Rosh Hashanah Friday night dinner? Great question. Don't go overboard, which is why the perfume always freaks me out. Not just because I think that's inappropriate to give at a dinner, especially someone who's been working for a long time to cook and get the meal ready, but also usually, 300, 400, 500 shekel for that. I would say if you get a nice bottle of wine somewhere between 80 to 120 shekel, you're fine, right? Don't go overboard with what to bring. Also ask. It's always okay to ask, what can I bring? That's not necessarily inclusive of a gift, but the gift can be, if they tell you, oh, don't bring anything, just yourselves, that can be a bottle of wine, right? That could be the box of chocolates they'll eat later. Also keep in mind that whatever you bring isn't necessarily going to be eaten or drunk that night, right? So don't, unless you are good enough friends with the host or hostess to know this, you don't need to keep your eyes on the bottle of wine or box of chocolates to see if it makes an appearance. If it doesn't, don't be insulted. The host or hostess might just be waiting to eat it later, or maybe everything is planned and it just doesn't fit in. Is Kabbalah that you mentioned coming from the same root as Jewish mysticism? Yes, Kabbalah is the verbal noun, the gerund, and we talked about this the other week about gerunds and verbal nouns of the verb lekabel, to get or receive, right? And the idea is Kabbalah is the receipt, the thing you get that you receive with all your purchases on it, and Kabbalah as the Jewish mysticism movement is about reception of a different strain of information, different strain of understanding of our world and of our texts, with a mystic connotation to it. So yes, it is the same root, absolutely. How do you say past the sheep's head, and are you obligated to eat it if it is sitting there staring at you on the Rosh Hashanah table? So first off, always good to arrive at a Rosh Hashanah dinner, especially people who don't follow the same minhag, the same diaspora traditions as you. Try to arrive at an earlier stage. Also, in case that there isn't assigned seating, that you don't sit in front of the sheep or the fish head. And if you sit in front of it, don't assume that you have to eat it. It's auspicious to eat it, particularly the eyes, but you're not obligated to do so. But if you get there early, maybe you have a little bit more leeway as to where you sit. Think about this also, by the way, the flip is also true. And this is a common joke in Israel about someone who comes from a Sephardi or a Mizrahi background going to an Ashkenazi family for a family dinner or holiday dinner, and they see gefilte fish on the table, and they almost pass out because it's so unappealing to them. So just as the sheep's head may be a little too much for some of us, so too is gefilte fish for others. We all have our red lines, as it were. Do Israelis use the term l'chaim during a toast? 100%. That is how we give a toast in Israel. L'chaim. There'll usually be all sorts of other things, and in fact, if you are familiar with the different simanim that we eat on Rosh Hashanah, each of them come with a toast, as it were. I have an article in Jerusalem Post talking about cocktails and about this whole notion of simanim coming out this week. And each one, whether it's apples and honey or pomegranates or beets or leeks or pumpkin or fenugreek or all the other things we eat, or sheep's head and fish head, there's a toast, for lack of a better term, that we say. And it begins with the term Yehi Ratzon, may it be your will. And it's talking about may it be God's will to bless us with something, right? Because number one, the notion is we've already said the appropriate blessings before a meal. And now we're eating very specific foods, but also we're eating these foods for a reason. We're intaking some of their traits, whether it's the look of the food or the name of the food in Hebrew or Aramaic, that will give us special protection or special help or a leg up in the new year ahead, right? So the one that we say for apples dipped in honey is Yehi ratzon lefanecha, shetechadesh aleinu shana tova mtuka, that we may be renewed, that we may have a sweet and happy new year ahead, right? That's a type of toast as well. But the one that we're going to do, obviously, at that Haramat Kosit is going to be L'chaim. Someone may give a whole toast as well, right? But that's what it is. The article is coming out online next Monday, so I'll be sure to share it with you next week when we talk about it. Are there a lot of communal holiday meals for those of us who don't have our own families and don't have a big circle of friends? Great question. Do communities connect singles with invitations? 100% they do. In larger cities, like here in Tel Aviv, also in Jerusalem, Haifa, Beersheba, Carmiel, places where there are a lot of Anglos, there typically are communal dinners arranged, whether through a synagogue or a community center. You can also check on Nefesh B'Nefesh's Israel calendar. If you're not familiar with it, go to the Nefesh B'Nefesh website, which you already know what it is because you know the Hebrew at nbn.org.il email to email us. So you already know nbn.org.il leads you to the Nefesh B'Nefesh website. Go to the Israel calendar. You should be able to see communal events there. Also check with your local municipality. A lot of community, there are oftentimes a lot of communal festive meals. Also, keep in mind, I'm slipping my tongue when I say family meals. I'm personally used to traveling back to the US for Rosh Hashanah because it's that important of a meal for me to be with my family. But I've also been here with friends, and it's been no less lovely. So if you don't have biological family here, your adopted family of friends or family friends or friends of friends are equally great to meet with. So start making those plans if you haven't already, and check around to see where communal meals are taking place, because a lot of people will open their doors happily to have new people around the table. Again, because it's considered that big of a deal, like Leila Seder, like the Seder night for Pesach is the Rosh Hashanah first night dinner. Great questions. Why isn't Days of Awe translated into Hebrew as no? So the person who's asking this, and I don't reveal people's names to keep it anonymous, you are translating Days of Awe from English into literal Hebrew, and that's not the Hebrew. Yamim Noraim. That is the Hebrew. The days, awe days, or awe-filled days, or awful days, however you want to call it. In English, we say days of awe. In Hebrew, we do not. Yamim Noraim. Nora is an adjective, not a noun. So it's Yamim Noraim. In English, it's two nouns put together, days of awe. In Hebrew, it's a noun and an adjective, Yamim Noraim. Think of it like the high holy days, right? The days are holy. In this case, they are Nora. They are awe-filled. Hopefully, they're not awful. Hopefully, you'll find some meaning in them. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. In which case, Toda Rabah, thank you all so much for joining. Next week, as I said, we're going to go through the appropriate wishes, greetings, small talk, how to get yourself through these family and friend meals, but also through all the different holidays that are coming up. What are the appropriate things to wish each other, whether you are observant or not, secular or religious, wherever you live in the country, wherever you are in the world, what's the appropriate thing to say in Hebrew? Any other questions you have about the holiday season, that is next week as well. Toda Rabah, thank you all so much. We'll see you here next week. Litraot.